coming back home's like walking in on a secret that everyone older than me knows.
My first boss was this guy called Ed Davis. He basically tells me, well, you have a great attitude, you have great enthusiasm, but you don't have the skills. I'm going to teach you and show you the ways on becoming a professional chef.
Situational Leadership 2 is based on the 4 development levels that we all progress through when we master a new task. In Roy's story, he was at development level 1, enthusiastic and ready to tackle new tasks without a clue how to begin. Roy's leader gave him what he needed, just clear direction to develop his skills as a chef.
We definitely had a moment when we realized we were completely overwhelmed with the knowledge of understanding what to do but not knowing how to take it on ourselves. We understood that we were a small and growing business, and having that knowledge, we knew that we needed to kind of bring someone else on board to help us. And it was the perfect time. We met our first manager, Rebecca, in that moment.
Hannah and Maggie were at development level 2 and felt more confused than competent. Their new manager brought the right combination of direction and support and got them back in the spotlight.
In 2010, I tore my Achilles tendon skiing, and I had surgery, rehabbed super hard all summer, and by the following winter, I was physically stronger than I'd ever been. But the mental component was missing. I just didn't have the confidence that I could do it because of that injury in the back of my mind.
With awesome skills but low confidence after her injury, Ingrid was at development level 3. Her mentor matched her with just the right amount of support to fuel her comeback. And for high performers at the top of their game at D4, just a little direction and support is all they need. What do these peak performers have in common? They didn't do it alone. They had mentors and leaders who helped them when they needed it. Situational Leadership 2, or SL2, shows leaders how to diagnose what their people need and match those needs with the right amount of direction and support. How great would it feel to get just what you need just when you need it?
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. I'm Denise. So today's webinar, we'll be talking about leading people through change with our speaker, Kevin. So a couple of house rules before we start. Please ensure that your mic is muted throughout the session. We encourage you to participate actively in this webinar, so feel free to type in your questions in the chat box. Before we begin, allow me to introduce our speaker, Kevin Chan. So Kevin is the managing partner of Momenta Group. So he is very experienced. He's a regional business strategy consultant and trainer who has lived and operated in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and New Zealand with projects across 100 countries in the Asia Pacific region. So he has a broad history of applying key principles across industries, including the financial sector, F&B, logistics, manufacturing, IT, nonprofit, and others. So without further ado, let's begin this session. So Kevin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Maybe I heard it wrongly just now. I don't think there's 100 countries around Asia Pacific region. So good afternoon, everybody. Always a bit shy to hear introduction like that, but that's part of the bio. So okay, this afternoon looks like we don't have, we've got quite a small intimate group here. So I would like to, if possible, run this a bit like a discussion rather than me sitting here talking to everybody, right? I know some people may be on you're on an MRT, some people may be on your way, somewhere not so convenient to switch on your video. But if you are able to, can I request that you switch on your video and also unmute yourself? So as long as there's no background noise and that kind of stuff, I'd like to ask if you can unmute yourself, and then we can run this session a bit like a chat. Because I think that could be better than just me talking at everybody and presenting like a set material, and then the principles are always applicable, But sometimes if we can talk about actually what you are going through, your specific situations, then we can help to apply that as well. Okay, so if you are able to, go ahead and unmute yourself and switch on your video, and then we can just, hi Cindy. Thank you so much for that.
Hi, Kevin. Nice to
Hey.
see you again.
Yeah, you too. Yokogawa, right?
Yes, Yokogawa.
Cool. The last time I saw you was at Lifelong Learning Institute
Exactly.
about 1 year ago.
Maybe more than that.
Maybe more than that.
Maybe
Wow.
2 years at the start of COVID.
Wow.
Probably slightly before, because we were
Okay.
able to have a face-to-face session, right?
Yeah. I think things hadn't gotten crazy yet. Wow, very good to see you again, Cindy. I think you've joined some of our other webinars as well, right?
Yes, but
Yeah.
maybe not able to join all. But
Yeah.
I have two colleagues here in this session, because I really highly recommend your session, your webinar
Cool.
as well. So yeah,
So nice. Thank you, Cindy. So who are your two colleagues?
Stella
Uh-huh.
and Tay. Is that you? I see your name. I hope it's you.
Hey, is it Ting Hua Tay?
Yes.
Okay. I think Stella
Stella
Stella's-
is also from Yokogawa.
Yeah, and I've seen her name on stuff before as well.
Mm.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're able to just on your video unmute, then we can chat a bit like this, and everybody can. Hey, hi Stella.
Hello.
Sorry, not to put you on the spot, but it's just easier to chat, right? Yeah, I think it's different from running one of these talk shows where I'm like this talking head going on forever, and then whether or not it connects, who knows. So cool. Well, some people didn't like that, so maybe they've left. Hopefully they come back, otherwise it's okay lah. So Kim and WS, Tay, if you can't unmute, that's fine. Cool. So I mean, we're here to discuss this idea of change, leading people through change, right? And so I suppose, what are some changes that you have experienced that have, okay, we do a positive and negative, that have maybe didn't go through as well as you hoped? And then why did it happen? Why do you think those changes failed? That's just, what are some changes you've seen, tried, and then failed, or a lot of problems? And then why do you think that happened? Any thoughts?
Yeah. To me, I felt that is due to the lack of communication.
Okay.
Or anticipating the other party. Okay, maybe I should put it another way. I think first we need to understand the level of understanding of the other party. Okay, I'm talking about scenario of actually within here our company, we are actually going through a lot of transformation.
Sure.
So there's a lot of uncertainty. So across various functions, there is many different transformation. So I'm actually from HR. So HR wise, we also going through a major transformation. So I think things like understanding who are our stakeholder, their level of understanding currently, whether do they buy in, having the kind of right strategy to communicate, reach out to them to get their support or buy-in. All these are important factors in determining how successful the change can occur. Transformation, I mean, change is talking about, yes, we change in system, etc. But end of the day, who are the user of the system? It's the people. So getting these people buy-in is important, and having understanding of where they are at their understanding the benefits of this is probably the key. So if they are at very shallow knowledge yet, so you need to put in more effort, or we have to anticipate the dimension that they are coming in. To tailor the communication based on the different stakeholder. I mean, this is what I would see.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So Cindy, you've just mostly covered the material I was going to talk about. But excellent insights, because okay, so there's a lot of change management programs around the process change, managing the different stages and all that, which is great. So nothing wrong with all those. But a lot of them miss out the most important factor, which is the human factor, which is like what you said, process and all that, this stage and that step, then step, whatever. It's important. But something we talk about in LPTC is that you can have the best plan, but if people are not on board, it's not going to work. On the other hand, you can have an average plan. Don't say bad plan. You can have an average plan. But if people are really for it, they will make it work. So actually, the key component is, are your people on the change? Are your people on board with the change? And how do you get them on board? And how do you keep them on board? Right? Because you can get them on board, and then halfway through things get difficult, and then they drop out. You did SL2, right? So the D2 phase, where they start to do it, and, wow, so difficult. I didn't expect this is going to be like this. Then they quit. So how do you keep them on that change journey and continue to build? So Stella, do you have any experiences of change that didn't work, and then any idea why?
If it's things that don't work, is actually, frankly speaking, it's more on drill down to communication.
Communication, huh?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Kim, WS, and Tay, if you'd like to contribute, just go ahead and unmute. If you can't, it's no problem. So just unmute if you want, or you can just type in the chat, okay? No issues. Great. So, okay, now let's think about a positive change, okay, that you have experienced. It worked. Everybody was happy at the end of it, achieved its purposes. People didn't quit. You had most of your staff still around at the end of the change. Now, what made that difference? Any thoughts?
Sorry, Kevin, your question again. Sorry, I missed out.
So a change that worked, right, that was effective. What made the difference? If you think back to a change that you've experienced, okay, it worked well, not too bad. What about it made it work that was different from the one that didn't work?
What made it work and what make it
different from the one that didn't work?
The main difference is definitely the ROI that we're talking about. Okay. So whether if it work out, definitely we are achieving our ROI or even more than what we expected.
Okay.
So I think what make it work, what doesn't make it work, really depends on how much we understand the stakeholder and how do we tailor or customize the kind of right communication to them. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Stella, anything to share? Maybe you've been involved with a change initiative, whether Yokogawa or previous place that you've been, that wow, it's worked really well. It's so cool, if only all change initiatives can be like that. Anything?
Okay, that is because I just joined Yokogawa, so it's just a first time doing the change management with them. But in terms of in my past employer, so the change is actually there are many change management projects. Yeah, so one of them is actually the totally change of the grants projects. Yeah, the government funding.
Yeah.
So we have to totally to let the different stakeholders, and there are many stakeholders, to let them know there is actually the funding actually reduced so much more.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the end, it's just more of like to get the leader support as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also every step that we take, we actually communicate with all parties that's involved.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually to keep them posted and updated. And in fact, they actually appreciate much of all this effort that we have actually did. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So again, communication has come up, right? So the question is, when do we start communicating about a change?
When do we start
communicating about a change? Do we start communicating about the change when the change starts to happen? Or do we start communicating about change once the senior leadership have designed the change, that we release it as communication?
From my past experience is that once we actually, before they actually finalize, we have actually start to prep all the stakeholders that are involved already, just to let them know, especially when it comes to budgeting, so that they are informed prior to that, and they are able to they have actually made plans for it.
Okay, yeah. Sure. Okay, so when we talk about people being involved with change, a big part of it is, and we talk about communication, right? So communication is great. The other note is that communication has to be two ways, and people need to feel like it is two way. Even if we let them know ahead of time or whatever, they need to feel like they have input into the communication, and then the management was responsive to their input, because then we have this magic thing called buy-in, right? They're like, hey, this change originally was like that, but when I gave my feedback, now they are changing it a bit to be like this. Wow, then they feel like they own a part of the change, and that's what you want, right? Okay, so
sense of ownership.
Yeah, sense of, and sometimes, right, it's a bit strategic to purposely design your change not perfect. So the first time you communicate a change, right? So these are some little, it's not actually part of the framework and all that, but it's little tricks lah. You design your change imperfectly, and then you let people give feedback and perfect it. Because if your first one goes out perfect, people got nothing to feedback, right? So the first one you go out, you purposely make a few holes here, a few holes there. Let people come back and say, hey, how about this one? How about this one? And later, if people don't catch it, it's okay. You can still, change it yourself. But you just let people come in and, hey, how about change, make some amendments. Then you get buy-in from them. I mean, that's just a little trick.
Yeah, true. But that depends on the company culture.
Yeah.
Some company culture, they are not so forgivable. It's that the first time you launch something, you better make sure you do it perfectly.
Sure. And company's culture is something that we will have to work with. And so this leading people through change, I'll go through some of the main frameworks and the kind of thing for us to that it brings up. But in terms of target audience, right? The standard leading people through change is targeted at people who are managing the change. And then there is another piece, a shorter half-day one, for people who are like the senior management, who are overseeing the change, but they're not doing it day to day. And then there is a 40-minute online one for all the team members who are being impacted by the change. Okay, so that one's called adapting to change. So once you have these three levels addressing the similar sort of change model, change thinking, then that's where we can align the culture. You talk about culture of organization. And I think Cindy maybe has attended one of my webinars where I talk about leadership culture, ecosystem. And so that's something also that really has been quite impactful on organizations. Okay, so maybe I'll just go through and some of the frameworks and some of the teaching points. So basically this webinar is a summary of the full one-day workshop. So in this webinar, you'll get the, I call it the brand's essence of chicken version. You can eat the whole chicken, but then you're very full. But if you want the essence of it, you can just drink that small bottle. And so this is a bit like this webinar. You'll have a bit of understanding of the frameworks, sort of head level understanding. But most people after they leave this webinar are not going to be able to implement it because there's a lot more that's in the full workshop. So this one is a bit like a taster. Hey, what's involved here? So just to set expectations now that, don't have people attend the webinar then go off and manage change immediately. So we start off with this, why do change efforts derail? And you shared some of this. And a lot of it was about, what you shared was about communication. But and also there's quite a lot of there's some other factors here as well. A lot of them come back to communication, right? Like you see, number one, people's concerns and questions not surfaced. So that's a communication problem. Those being asked to change not involved in planning the change. So that's where I ask, when do you start involving people in change? Communicating, etc. So a lot of these are the top reasons why change efforts derail from Blanchard's design research. And so we sort of go through this and people pick, okay. And usually people end up going, actually, yeah, a lot of the reasons why the changes I've experienced have failed come from this, on this slide. So we look at this, what's the biggest driver of technology in your organization? Of technology, is it mobile technology? Is it customer expectations? Is it your chief strategy officer who's been driving all this change? Or is it COVID-19? So recently, COVID has been the driver for a lot of our technology adoption. Work from home, all this mobile stuff. And so we realized that a lot of things actually can be done. It's just whether we want to or not, whether there is the need for it to be done. And a lot of the ideas, hey, this one cannot, that one cannot, all got put aside when the necessity is there. Okay, so change is coming, and there are two approaches in general. There are two approaches to people leading change. There's a typical sort of top-down approach, which is in the gray box, and then there's what Blanchard we call high involvement collaborative change, and it looks sort of like this. The top-down approach starts by the senior leadership or whatever, they they come up with a change strategy, they design the change and all that, and then they announce it. And then they implement the project plan with everybody. So that whole implementing project plan, fixing implementation problems, there's a whole science and whole industry around that sort of change management. I was actually involved with that early in my career. I was in IT and process management consulting. So we're doing that for a lot of companies. And I found that actually a lot of our changes that resulted in this. People just comply, no choice, have to do, otherwise they're going to get fired. This is the system my company's using. No choice, whatever. And the results are marginal because you don't have people's hearts. You don't have that buy-in from people. Versus with Blanchard, what we try and influence people to think about. And this is sort of the role of HR as well, because HR is there to champion the people side of the company, right? And to me, the people side of the company is the company. I mean, what company do you have without the people? You have a whole bunch of equipment. So high involvement collaborative change it involves people right at the start, even from what could be. So what are the problems we're facing? What refers to our current situation. So what are the problems we are facing now? What could be? So a bit of that visioning. Hey, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to, go through these 4 processes to get this one thing done? Can we streamline these 4 things into one process? So what could be? Then collaboratively build a project and people plan with others. So involve people in the plans. From the first stage, we figure out the what. What do we want to do? The second stage is figuring out the how, and also involving people with that. So it could be focus groups, it could be sessions where you while the planning is happening, you do these feedback sessions with people, you ask for feedback. And like I said, actually implement the feedback and let them feel like they are making a difference. That's the big thing. And as you talk to management, right, the sales sort of line is that the best change management plans, if the people are not on board, may or may not work. Probably won't work if the people are not on board. But even average plans, if your people are on board, they will make it work, right? So that's a big, strong case to make sure that whoever's managing the change is also thinking about the people side of things. So collect, and then, you know, there are always issues that are going to come up. And if people are on board, when issues come up, they're like, yeah, okay, this is a problem, but I have a solution for you. If people are not on board and slightly resistant to the change, what's their posture? Their posture is going to be, hey, see lah, your change got problem already, right? I mean, I'm being very Singaporean. Yeah, change got problem already, you know how? That kind of stuff. And you don't want that. You want the first one, hey, there's an issue came up, we could do this to circumvent the issue. What we get is commitment and sustainable results. The cost of this right-hand high involvement collaborative approach is more time with people. This might make the change project go a bit longer. But if you want to weigh up a change project that is fast but doesn't work versus one that maybe it takes a bit more time but works well, I would take the second one any day, right? Because if you have the first one, you're just going to have to redo it again later. Waste a lot more time and energy. Okay, so there's a video here. Let's watch this video together. What change looks like. It sort of introduces the idea, the topics. Or maybe before we do this video, any questions or comments about this slide? Okay,
Not for me.
cool. Okay, let's, this is a short video just introducing the topic.
At the height of the so-called Decade of Death in East Los Angeles in 1986, a neighborhood priest had a simple idea: to change the narrative around ex-gang members. He started with a small bakery and overcame challenge after challenge, growing it into a worldwide industry, providing jobs to those who needed them most. Father Greg Boyle created not just jobs, but community, and battled to change our minds about the potential of homeboys and homegirls. He persevered to build an industry for his own neighborhood and many others. Grit looks like this. From a small neighborhood in Hangzhou, China, he failed his college entrance exam twice in 4 years, rejected from over 30 jobs out of school. Relentlessly curious, he sought to learn English by offering free tours of his hometown to American visitors. His passion for learning led to his first job, which took him to the United States, where he excitedly explored the internet for the first time. Jack Ma was driven to understand how the internet would change commerce, and realized how hard it was to find Chinese products online. So he convinced 17 friends to help him start Alibaba, then convinced 100,000 employees to follow his vision. He asked, how do you bring the internet to Chinese commerce? And his answer transformed global commerce forever. Curiosity looks like this. A world-famous pianist and conductor from one of the most divided cities on Earth recognizes a need and redirects his career. He tried multiple approaches to bring people together and foster peace, moving from public discussions to writing books and to conducting international concerts, before ultimately building an international orchestra, recruiting musicians from Israel, Palestine, and Arab countries. He withstood personal and political attacks from both sides, and quickly changed the tone of the discussion from one of anger to one of peace. Daniel Barenboim connected with musicians from across ideological barriers, creating a synergy amongst the players in his orchestra that spilled into the streets and across militarized borders. inspiring a world to push for peace. Agility looks like this. From the mountains of West Virginia to the furthest reaches of outer space. From a segregated school in the Jim Crow South to breaking barriers in the NASA control room to putting a man on the moon. Katherine Johnson pushed through cultural barriers to claim her place in history. When NASA switched to electronic computers, John Glenn personally requested Katherine Johnson check their calculations. She mentored a team of bold women mathematicians and cultivated her legacy, both mathematical and revolutionary. She innovated new mathematical modeling systems for calculating flight trajectories, while changing NASA's policies from the inside, inspiring a world to push new frontiers. Courage looks like this. Leading change looks like this.
Right, very nice. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about the workshop talk starts off with these 4 elements of mindsets of change. Courage, I won't go through all of them here. Let's basic courage, curiosity, agility, grit. So these 4 things come together. From a change leader's perspective, the question is how do we inculcate this in our people who are affected by the change? And then there is an online course called Adapting to Change, which is really for team members that spends most of the time on these 4 mindsets: grit, curiosity, agility, courage. Because if with these 4 things, then our people are set up well to firstly, be courageous to embrace the change. And then when the change inevitably meets problems, to overcome those problems, curiosity, agility, etc. Okay, so that is the first sort of framework that LPTC, Leading People Through Change, goes over, which is the mindset side. Because when you're working with people, processes and all that is one thing, but where people at, their posture, their mindset is such a key part of it. Okay, so those 4 is what we start off with. And then we look at this idea of stages of concern. So we quite often think about the stages of a project, but people forget to look at the stages of people's concern during the project, while the project's happening. And so the proposition is that if we can tell what people's concerns are going to be, then we can sort of jump in front of it and address these concerns just as they come up or slightly before they come up. Then people realize that, oh, actually, my leaders are thinking about how we are feeling. My leaders are thinking ahead. The good thing is that these stages are predictable. And they happen through almost every change that happens. And so actually we can predict what people are going to feel as they go through the life cycle of a project. Okay, so right at the start of the project, people are going to have informational concerns. So informational concern, I like the word information, it's all the very practical, like what's this change? Why are we doing it? What is it about? Very sort of high level overview, like what in the world is this? And the big question there is the why, actually. Okay, why do we need to do this change? What's wrong with what we're doing in the past? You hear that very often, right? What's wrong with what we're doing in the past? Why are we doing this? So that's an informational concern. And then people have personal concerns. Okay, how is this going to affect me? How is it going to affect my job? Am I still going to have a job at the end of this change? Am I going to have more work? Am I going to have less work? How is this going to affect my KPIs, right? I'm being measured on number of X, whatever. Maybe salespeople, I'm being measured on my sales numbers. But if you're going to a lot of direct sales online, how is that going to affect my sales numbers? These are very, very personal type questions and concerns. Implementation concerns. So informational concerns was like, why are we doing this? What actually are we doing there? That implementation is the how. How are we actually going to do this? Okay, we've always been doing this. So that how breaks up into different areas. You've got resourcing questions. Like, we're already so busy. Who is going to do this change? How many more hours am I going to have to work? What does this actually mean for my team? Implementation, and then we've got the process stuff. Is it possible to do this change technically? How are we gonna move our processes across, move our technology across? All these things. All these are part of the implementation concerns. Impact concerns. So how is this going to impact the work? How is this going to impact our clients? And finally, refinement. Okay, so there is there's this specific shape because this flows in with the life cycle of a change. At the top here, so that while it's sloping up, it's sort of building towards sort of your change date. This top here, we call it a tipping point, where the change has happened and will, there's no going back. It's happening. And then beyond that, we've got the refinement of the change, small adjustments, etc. But the change already is happening. And as the company is going through the change process, these are the concerns that people are having. And so sometimes people who are able to think ahead will think about all these questions at the start, right? Especially people who maybe they're a bit resistant to the change. But what this refers to is when they actually feel that, okay, now I'm really concerned about, I'm not just thinking about it, now I'm really concerned about this issue. Now I'm really concerned about this issue. Now I'm really concerned about this issue. And if as change leaders, we can get up in front of it and communicate and address these concerns, then it's what you're talking about, good change communication, bringing people on board, etc. So we've got the 5 stages of concern, and these four things here: frame, build, strengthen, and entrust are the high involvement leadership strategies for change. Each of these strategies addresses 2 concerns, primarily 2 concerns. Okay, and then up the top here, you've got your kickoff, your go live, your tipping point. These are sort of the generally corresponding stages of the change. So we've got a kickoff of the change, and notice that this framing information all starts way before the change process kicks off, because we want to start to frame the case. So shortly, I'll go to some slides that talk about what framing means, and then framing addresses informational and personal concerns about the change. So why are we doing this? The big question: why are we doing this change? Why now? What does it involve? So the high-level questions. And then when that starts to address some people's personal concerns, as they continue to have these personal concerns, we want to start to talk about the build. Okay, so we'll talk about what build is. And then you're going to have these you're going to start, okay, now we're designing the change, we're starting to implement some of it. So what is implementation concerns? So that's the strengthen phase. And then before that, you've got the go live. So you're building it, it goes live, and then you want to sustain, you want to reinforce the change. That's the strengthen part. So even after go live, it's not impossible that changes get rolled back. I used to work on banking, telephone banking systems for banks very early on in my career. We'd have changes, we'd plan the change, we'd go through and all that. But if it wasn't working, there's a possibility of rolling it back. Okay, so that's the sort of strengthen phase where it could get rolled back. But if we strengthen it well, we do it well, it doesn't get rolled back, hits a tipping point, and then it's in forever. And then we want to entrust and hand over the change to people so that they can run with the change moving forward. Okay, so these are the 4 strategies that we talked about during LPTC. And then the frame, what each strategy, what the actions look like are going to be here. Hey, Tay, no problem. Thank you for that. So what's within the strategy? We'll elaborate on it a little bit here. So the gap between what is and what could be, that's a gap statement. So during the actual workshop, we actually work together and work out a gap statement. So currently, what are things like? What would you like it to be? Explain not just why, but why now. Okay, communicating the why repeatedly, consistently, involving advocates. So that's later we'll talk about different people, groups of people in the company, and surfacing predictable informational and personal concerns. So those are the first 2 concerns that people have, and we want them to raise them. We don't want them to keep it inside and after a while it starts to fester. We want them to, hey, tell us what your concerns are so we can address them. Okay, so all this is part of framing the change. And during the full-on workshop, we actually work out, on the gap statement, practice explaining why, the why statements. We actually get people to practice putting this stuff into practice. Then the bill comes in to address the personal and the implementation concerns that people have. And that's quite an interesting phrase. What do you think of that? Those who plan the battle rarely battle the plan. The people making the plans are rarely the ones actually having to implement it, run it, and make it work, right? So I know, who knows this? I don't know who said this. Yeah, but from Cindy's smart laugh, it looks like you've experienced it too. So with the build phase, where change is starting to happen, we're starting to roll it out. This is quite an interesting thing for us to think about. What are the forces for the change, or what are the forces against the change? Okay, so forces for the change, if they're not strong enough, forces against change too strong, we end up with this, people get stuck in the status quo, which is no change. So we talk about 3 different things we can do with this. We can increase the forces for the change, or we can decrease the forces against the change, or we can do both at the same time. So there are different strategies that we can come up with. And what strategies we actually come up with differs from company to company, from culture. Culture differs depending on whether, what sort of change it is. But basically we're looking at what are sort of the incentives, right, for change. How can we make it so that when people think about the change, it creates a positive emotional response versus, change again. So this is something that we go through and we think about what the forces for are and what the forces against the change. And so again, during the build phase, we want to surface these barriers, what are in front of people's minds. Co-create. So co-create is a key word, the change plan with both advocates and resistors. So we'll talk about advocates, resistors shortly. But basically you want to involve them in the co-creation of this change plan. Putting the right resources into place, clarifying priorities, deciding how to measure impact, test change. Final one, involving advocates in lowering concerns. So all these are sample activities we can implement during this build phase. So if you want to grab a screenshot, feel free to do that, no problem. So we started with framing the change, and then as we're moving into the process, we want to build the change. And then we want to strengthen the change. So strengthen is sort of the reinforcement from the go live period onwards. Whenever the changes, depending on what changes, you've got your own version of a go live. And so the strengthen actually happens after the change. So one key thing with this methodology is that, or not, I wouldn't want to call it methodology, this way of thinking is that your change effort does not finish at go live. Your change effort finishes when people have fully adopted it after the entrust phase. So even after go live, people can be quite unhappy with the change. And you've probably heard of examples where a change has been implemented, everything seems very happy. Wow, you got all your champagne and balloons to celebrate the change. And then half the people leave the company because they're like, wow, this change is hopeless. I told you already not to do it. And then they resign. Then was that change successful? Okay, so the purpose of Strengthen is that you want to build the impact of the change. You want to make sure the impact is positive. You want to extend the reach of the change, and you want to move the change towards that tipping point where, okay, this change is definitely staying. Just because a change has been implemented doesn't mean it's staying. Sometimes it gets implemented and then gets rolled back because no, that didn't work. So we want to get change implemented, and the point where the change, this is not changing, this is where we're moving ahead with. And so that we call the tipping point. So the purpose of Strengthen is to get these 3 points there. So the leader actions here are, I'll just run through them really quickly. Modeling, we want to model the mindset behaviors. With this new change, what sort of behaviors are we modeling? When there's some problems, when there's some things which are going to be different from what was before, how do we react to it? How do we respond to it? So we're going to model those. Acknowledge and share best practices, help resolve implementation issues, because they are going to occur. There will be implementation issues, no matter how good your plan is. Because generally, people don't like change. You've heard the phrase, right? The only person who likes change is a baby with a soiled nappy. Nobody else likes change. So share impact data or the proof that the change is working. And then we want to connect the advocates, so people who are very keen on the change, to the undecided, so who are generally the majority. We want to connect them and use the advocates to advocate to the undecideds about the change. Address any sort of resistance. So don't leave resistance, don't leave things just to simmer. We want to, people who are unhappy or don't leave it to simmer. We want to address it. We want to address them nicely, but we still do want to address them. Final strategy, it's impact. So entrust. So entrust addresses these 2 stages, the impact and the refinement concerns. So with entrust, we want to acknowledging the tipping point means we are saying things like, well, it'd be a great change. Look like this is something that we will have moving forward. It's something that we will continue to live with, or something that will continue to build our company. We want to encourage continuous improvement. There is sometimes a tendency for people who implemented a change to not want to change again because they're like, this is the best. That's what I came up with. This strategy is the best. What do you mean you can improve on it? So if you can improve on it, it means it wasn't the best. It's a bit of a slight on me. So don't think about it that way. This is the new normal. It's a new floor. And then future generations, future change will just build on this floor. And so continuous involvement, bringing in people who are involved with the change, people who are, I don't say victims of the change, people who are team members who had to change, bring them in and involve them in a continuous involvement. Delegate change, stay connected and supportive. So the change team shouldn't suddenly disappear after go live date. They should still be connected and supportive until a certain point after that, where tipping point's done. And it's not necessarily a scientific time, but there's a feel where, okay, everything's embedded. Things are going. It's not moving back. Now it's now the new normal. It's now business as usual. Then we can disband the team. Yeah, so the with this final stay connected supportive talks about not disbanding the team too quickly. Okay, so any questions or comments or thoughts about this, these 4 strategies around change management? I know we've gone over them really quickly here. Yeah, I know if so these 4 here, right? Frame, build, strengthen, and trust. I know we've gone over them really quickly, but any thoughts? It's just a 1-hour session. And we'll spend more time on it during the full workshop.
Yeah, Kevin. Yeah, this
Yes.
is Cindy. Okay, I think what you said make a lot of sense. Personally, I really think that this is a very good session. I mean your training. But when we talk about change, there is different type of people involved. So this program that you're talking about is good for the owner of the change, the person who is from top driving orders. Okay.
Correct.
But then I think the implementer, okay, depending on the size of the project, the people who needs to understand, grasp it, and then implement it, also needs to see it in a similar manner. So I think many a time this is the middle group.
Yeah.
It's the one that is sandwiched, that really needs to understand it, grasp the gist of it, so that they can pass the same message down, able to do the change management, right? Make sure that how to hit the tipping point and continue beyond that. And because many a time this is the group that is frustrated.
Yes.
So, if it's me as a company, what I see that this middle one is the group that really needs the support and this kind of training to know how they can frame their mind themselves first, and then also the people along the way that needs to be part of the success factor.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely right. So this webinar or something like this is good for some, like you say, the senior people who are overseeing, they're not the ones implementing it. The full 1-day workshop is for the ones implementing the change. Sometimes we can add on another day where then we go slower as we teach one concept, then they work out the plan for that section. You teach another concept, they work out the plan for that session. So the 1-day one goes through all the concepts. It's a bit of practice, but there's not that enough time for them to work out their own plans. If we turn it into a workshop where they work out their own change management plan for your company, then it becomes a 2-day workshop where we teach the concepts, they apply it, work out their plan, teach the concepts, apply it, work out their plan, etc. And then for the people affected by the change, who in some, they're not the ones implementing the change, they can have input and give ideas, but they're not really the decision makers, so to speak. There's the online one, which is adapting to change. So that one is I think about 45 minutes online, no face-to-face or virtual workshops. It's just all, and we talk about the 4 mindsets for change, that courage, grit, curiosity, and what's the other one? And then we talk about this process a little bit. So basically we use a similar model, but then they see it from the perspective of somebody affected by the change, rather than from the people implementing the change. Yeah, so we don't try to be, like McKinsey 7 stages, or there are other companies that do the change management process. So the Blanchard side of things is the people management of the side of the change. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Go.
Actually, for me personally, I always put people first.
Yeah.
Because without people, you're not going to have the effective change.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is something that I'm looking at how to help these people so that they not so much on the process. The process owner definitely can design and do better than us. So as HR, we really, it's more of how to enable them in the mental part of it, to know how to cope with it and do the strategizing such that we are able to support the completion and achieve it, to where we want to be. So yes, this is, I'm looking more at the people side.
Yeah, definitely. And that's our message, like we're shouting from the rooftops to the whole industry. Hey, when you do change, please don't forget the people. Because most of the other methodologies are around the project process. And we keep saying, hey, don't forget the people. They are actually the key component to this.
Yeah.
So great. I think we're definitely aligned on that. Yeah. So when we look at the people, right? I'll go over this really quickly because I think it's quite obvious. So there are going to be 3 types of people that you in your organization. There's going to be the advocates, the undecideds, and the resistors. So advocates are people who are already positive about the change. Don't have to convince them too much. They are quite keen. There are these people who they're waiting outside the Apple store, when a new Apple is going to get released. So those are the ones. So there's some in an organization, maybe about 10% of people, 15% of people might be advocates. So generally, there are fewer informational and personal concerns. So they still have implementation and those concerns later on, but initially they're quite positive about the change. And then you've got undecideds. Undecideds generally are the majority of your middle. If you think about a bell curve, they're the ones in the middle. About 70% of the population might be undecided. So they're unaware, little no information. They're the ones that can be swayed either way, depending on your communication. So these are the key ones that we need to work on. The advocates already, we don't really have to work on them because they're already keen. These are the ones we need to work on. Address the concerns, giving them information when they need it, and getting them on board. The good news is that we can use the advocates for it. They'll come up a bit later. And then we've got resistors, the last 15%. And they're not always bad because they may have good reason for being to having the resistance. And so we do want to engage them and find out what is your resistance? Why do you feel negative about this? And then take it on board. Okay, so if we think about change and this organization or whatever population is required to change, don't think about them as just one glob of people. You can think of them as there are some people who are going to be positive, some people who are negative on the other end. In the middle, you've got the mass who are just whatever, no choice to change law. So how do we get the advocates? How do we tailor our communication? Get the advocates on board, help to get the advocates to help to influence the other people. Because think about an average person working in the company, who is able to influence them better? A manager or a peer? Right? So they will go to the manager, manager say this, okay lah, manager say this, I'll do. And the idea is the perception is that manager will tell them what the company line is. But if their peer tells them something, they're more likely to listen to it, to believe them. And so these your advocates are going to be across organization, not just the managers. And so engaging advocates at various levels is useful as well. Sorry, Cindy, you're about to say something.
Yeah, must know the people who can influence.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're not necessarily managers. They can be people across the level, across the board. So leading people through change. So these are the 2 main frameworks that we deal with in leading people through change. Those stages of concern, and then the 4 strategies, and then these 3 like target segments of people who are involved with the change, and tailoring our communication to them. How do we use them to influence each other? Not can seem a bit manipulative, but not in a manipulative way. In an effective way to drive forward the change. Something, if you've got change that's currently happening, what we've got is this change scan report. So it's an assessment. People involved with the change can fill out, there are 20 questions about how they are currently feeling about the change. So what is really useful is, if there's a change happening, to use this, to give this assessment out to people regularly, maybe once a week, depends how long the change is, once a month or once a quarter or something like that. Then it gives you a really good idea of where people are at with the change, what are their concerns. So this gives you, because when we talk about, the personnel, informational concerns, personal concerns, the different stages of concern, this will tell you actually where people's concerns are at the time, at any one time. So you've got it's 25 statements, and people go strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And from that, you will get a report that looks like, so an overview of the company. How many advocates do you have at the moment? How many undecideds do you have? How many resistors do you have? Then you can see how overall people are feeling about this change. Then your resistors are something people focus on. Yellow, monitor, green, acknowledge. Right? So what we do, how we focus, monitor, acknowledge are things that we talk about during the actual course. Then you've got all this data that will come back, how many, the ratings for the various measures and all that. But basically, it gives you, at the end, compiles all those things you need to focus on. Okay, so these are all the things you need to focus on, all the rates, put them all together. These are all things we need to just monitor. It's okay, but just keep an eye on it. And then these are all things which are green, which people are, yes, they're understanding well. And each of these numbers actually relate to one of the concerns. And so we can see that, okay, people's personal concerns, they're quite okay with that. Informational concerns, okay. Oh, but implementation concerns, a bit of a worry there. So this change scan will give you the ability to do this sort of survey across, and you don't have to have every single person do it. You can do a randomized randomized sample, just to give you and then as you go through the change, maybe it's a 1-year transition, every month or every 2 months, it's like taking a temperature, like how things are going. And then when people have done LPTC, then they know what to do with this report. So that's the change scan report. There's a shorter one, which is only 5 questions here. Change scan is a 25 questions one. Then there's a change pulse, which is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 questions. And people to answer this, and gives you again another, like, just take a pulse lah. So the first one is a bit like, you take a temperature. This one is take a pulse. So it's shorter.
I think, Kevin, I understand and recognize all these are actually important and relevant, okay, for us to track where we are and how to do it better. So, okay, but I'm not sure if today on this session, sorry, it seems that everybody has left.
Yeah, it's just us anyway, so it's fine.
Also, I'm not sure if this is the right time also, or should we set up another time, because I would like to, we are having big change here. And I would like to see how we can support people who are implementing the change. That means support the implementer.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm not sure if this is the right platform or we need to arrange another time, so depending on what works better, because I know today webinar may not be for this objective, so I just want to be respectful of the.
And sure, I mean it's just us, but it's also 5 something on a Friday, right? So, okay, maybe just really quickly, how many implementers are you thinking?
Okay, then I may need to give you a bigger context first so you understand what I'm actually looking for.
Okay.
So is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Okay. In Singapore, our office here is the regional headquarters. So the bigger plan is actually coming from Japan, the global team. Okay. So the global team has all the great plans, etc. So they are then gathering the regional resources to come in for the designing phase, etc. Then of course we will become the implementer, because as regional, you still have below the below line, right? The country officers. So I wish to support the implementer in the middle process, okay? So that they are able to sustain and keep this going, because this is a very important layer to make sure that the real intent and is get the message goes through, get the buy-in of the country level. From the top to convince regional is not so difficult.
Sure.
There's the maturity there, that we know why this has to be done, etc. But for the top to understand the real challenges to implement it at local level is limited, because they are not really at grounds. Okay, so the middle one is the one that understands the ground as well, and know what is required from the top.
Okay.
So this group needs to connect and know how to do, without making themselves burn out. Okay, so that is my concern. And that is why I want to support this middle group. How to teach them how they can cope and the right mindset to do this. Firstly, for themselves, and then know how to push the implementation to the countries. So it's not so much on the technical part, but the people part.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure if there's anything that you have to support this kind of change. So it's a change management I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but
it's the people side of
which
change.
aspect? Yeah, it's the people side.
Yeah.
Because we are having changes across. I'm from HR. Okay, yes, HR there is change from the finance. There is change from the procurement. There is change from the customer relationship. So there is many. We are actually trying to be more globalized. So many things is, yes, we have, but it's more like standalone in your local country, local region. So we want to come on standardization globally. So this is the big change that is going on. So to have this kind of program is going to really help the people across, not just my HR. I'm not just talking about for my HR, but for the whole organization.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah. So I think maybe what we can do, and this is what quite often happens with this program, that it's run in-house for you guys, and then we use this program as like a skeleton, and then we put in your own change issues or your own change, the things that sort of contextualization of whatever we're teaching to what is currently happening in the company.
It's probably more of teaching them the concept or the technique. We won't. I'm also not looking at having a session for them to raise up their issues, because we you see, they come from different functions.
Okay.
So they are going to have different issues. So if we design it such that they can raise, we will not be able to
cover all of them.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So I want it to be something generic.
Okay.
Not for specific processes.
Okay.
Because every of all these process, there is process owner, there is big names that is helping us manage at Japan level. What are the steps, etc. So this is that, and even like surveys, just now you share. I understand those are really good questions, and it's good that we know the pulse of this situation.
Sure.
But I believe that partner will be driven or be covered already at global level.
Okay.
It's part of in the pipeline. What are the things that they need to do?
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay. So okay, I think there's probably a bit more to discuss about this. So maybe we can make a time next week to go through, a bit more detail, understand what you're wanting. I mean, yeah, a bit
Yeah.
more, and then we can discuss it next week, lah.
Yes.
Are you available on? Let's see.
Maybe towards end of the week, Thursday, like that better, because the beginning of the week I'm very tied up.
I'm away from Wednesday onwards.
Okay, no problem. When will you be back?
The following.
Holiday?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, because my girls just start their holiday, their school holiday.
Yes, the children holiday just started. Sure.
Yeah.
After the holiday, not so hurry. It's just
No.
that, yeah,
Okay, can.
I want to start exploring.
Okay. So say the following week, Wednesday. So 8th of June.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, you morning? Yeah, I think only morning.
Afternoon, maybe like 3:30. Is it okay?
What's this KB marketing planning meeting? Oh, that's Denise.
Okay, never mind. Thursday also can.
Thursday. Okay.
Or Friday also okay. Yeah,
Thursday,
my
Thursday I'm traveling again.
okay.
Tuesday, say 1:30.
Can.
Tuesday
So it's
1:30.
on the 7th, right?
Yes.
Can. Tuesday 1:30 is
Can,
fine.
Okay.
Stella, are you available? Tuesday 1:30 on the 7th.
Okay.
Okay, can.
Oh, or 2 o'clock can?
Can 2 o'clock can.
2 o'clock can. Okay. I'll send you an invite lah.
Okay.
I think I'm not sure whether I have Stella's email, but I definitely have.
I can forward.
You can
to her,
forward
no
lah, huh?
problem.
Okay, cool. Great. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Oh, you enjoyed today's personalized webinar. No, from the start, we already knew, because this webinar, there are very few registrations. So yeah, so we already knew it was going to be quite relaxed and just
Okay.
personalized lah.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay,
Nice
thank
to
you.
talk.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.